Most college football media and fans across the nation, when talking about Florida football, focused on that brutal schedule and what might be the fate of Billy Napier and all of that big picture business. But there's work to be done day to day. And of course, we're going to see the culmination of that spring work in the swamp on Saturday. We got David Waters here, of course, from Gators Breakdown, the best in Florida football coverage. David, how you doing?
Good, Mark. Coming up on the final days, final few practices for spring practice for the Gators. So been, I won't say too eventful this spring, but certainly glad to have some football to talk about, even though, somewhat limited access. But hey, what else you going to do in March and April?
and steering everyone away from whatever we say on Saturday, those are the players that are stepping up, or those are the players that are struggling. It's one of 15 sessions. It's the one that everybody gets to see. So that's the importance, is that people get to see it, but it's no different in terms of an evaluation of this team. So once you get to see what happens on Saturday and put that together with everything else that's happened in the last couple of weeks, what are your basic impressions of what this Florida team's been able to improve on in the last month?
Mark, I'll give you probably one storyline for each side of the ball. There's been a heavy focus on Gators Breakdown the last couple of days. And coming out of that second scrimmage from last Saturday as well, Florida in that offense, Graham Mertz at quarterback, a big-time focus on pushing the ball down the field. Graham Mertz coming from Wisconsin, and priority number one coming from Wisconsin was take care of the football. And he did that. He had a big bounce back, and he turned the ball over. I forget the number in 2022 at Wisconsin, but it was an astronomical amount. And it was like, oh no, Florida just went from Anthony Richardson, who turned the ball over, to a quarterback who would turn the ball over at Big Ten and Wisconsin. Can Billy Napier work some magic there? And there was some magic there. Graham Mertz really improved his ability to turn the ball over. It completely flipped the script. So now for him, it's okay. Now, as Billy Napier likes to say it, now it's time to take this calculated risk. Graham Mertz was around 70% completion percentage, but a lot of that was due to, checking down, not taking a whole lot of risk down the field. Well, now it's, all right, let's take the next step in this offense. You made improvement last year. We saw you take away those turnovers, but now let's push the ball down the field a bit more. That's been a big-time focus all offseason in spring practice of that being the next step in this Florida offense. Trey Wilson returns at running back, at wide receiver. And then, of course, Billy Napier has lauded the two tackles they brought into the transfer portal, Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon from San Diego State, Devin Manuel from Arkansas, as true tackles. He says Florida didn't play with true tackles last year. They had some guys out of place, hit the transfer portal, so protection should be better for Graham Mertz as well. It wasn't all Graham Mertz last year of why Florida couldn't push the ball down the field. Mark, anytime Florida would almost play action pass or a deep drop, there was a lot of pressure in Graham Mertz's face. So protection up front, Graham Mertz taking more chances and then relying on a weapon like Trey Wilson at wide receiver should go a long way in Florida, getting that explosion in the offense. And on the other side, Mark, it's been lauded and hopefully something that comes to fruition in the fall would be much better safety play. I just mentioned the transfers all along the offensive line for Florida, but Florida hit the transfer market heavy for the safety position as well. Brought in Asa Turner from Washington, and then DJ Douglas from Tulane, Triquez Bridges from Oregon, to create some competition with Jordan Castell, who was all SEC freshman last year, and Bryce Thornton, who got a lot of freshman playing time last year at the safety spot as well. So Florida needed experience to help push those guys. And DJ Douglas and Asa Turner have been probably names I have heard the most out of any players this spring as far as improvement goes, a position group that Florida needed help at the safety spot, and those guys have shown up, practice in and practice out. So creating turnovers, great in coverage, and number one, Mark, tackling. Florida's been a dreadful tackling team the last few years. That continued in Billy Napier's second year last year. So this time of year, you're going to hear some good things, but probably the most positive aspect I'm hearing so far is much better safety play because of what Florida has done in the transfer portal.
David, back to Mertz. Based on what I'm hearing, he's showing a little bit more just comfort, even off the field, that he's the guy. He's been on campus now. He understands. He knows his teammates, knows what's expected of him. He just is just a more comfortable person now that he's been in Gainesville for over a year.
Absolutely, Mark. I mean, a year ago, he was learning the offense. I mean, the spring was him taking his first snaps in Billy Napier's offense, and now that familiarity is there. So now, look, he's even got a chance now to teach it. DJ Lagway, the 5-star freshman, is right behind him, and I think there's probably some positivity to go along with that too, and trying to teach somebody else the offense, what you like about the offense, and now. Mark, given that he's been in college football for so long as well, with this experience in Billy Napier's offense, I mean, now he knows so much of the offense, he's helping make the game plan. He's helping, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. Let's build on the things I do like in this offense and see if we can take that next step. Russ Callaway has been promoted to a co-offensive coordinator there with Billy Napier, so you get some more of the air raid emphasis from his background input into this offense as well. So there's some things that are changing, Mark, but I do think just the experience of having Graham Mertz back in this offense. I mean, we got to remember, this is Billy Napier's third year. This is the first time he's had a returning quarterback at Florida. So that should go a long way as well in this offense, hopefully taking those next steps for Billy Napier, because, Mark, the offense has been serviceable, no doubt. It's been the better side of the ball by far in Billy Napier's tenure. But there is a step in consistency. There is a step in big play explosion that they're looking for this spring.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown. Head on over there. Check out David's work. If you're not aware, you should be. Even if you're not a Florida fan and following the SEC, get on over to Gators Breakdown. It's right here on YouTube, also gatorsbreakdown.com, and your favorite audio platform as well. And you mentioned the transfer portal, some of the help along the offensive line. If you look at the sheer numbers, they lose 22 players, they gain 11. That looks like a negative, but obviously it's a numbers game in regards to scholarships and so forth. How do you think they stand in regards to the additions and subtractions through the transfer portal and what they might want to do starting next Monday when, again, we're going to have another transfer portal cycle headed our way?
So we'll go transfer portal, and at the wide receiver spot, they bring in Chimere Dike, who played with Graham Mertz a couple years ago at Wisconsin. So there's familiarity there as well. As we're talking about this passing game explosion, there's a relationship that's already been built there. Mark, I still think Florida may go try at another receiver, and also I think when spring practice is over, that might be a position Florida may lose a player or two as well. There's some veterans who haven't quite broken through in their career at Florida. They may decide to go somewhere else and play. So I think Florida would probably like to add another anyway, but it may be forced to because of numbers if they do lose one or two wide receivers when spring is over. Florida hit the transfer portal on the defensive line as well, bringing in Joey Slackman, one of the top defensive linemen in the transfer portal last cycle. In that winter cycle, one of the top defensive linemen in the transfer portal. But I still think Florida could use one at edge rusher as well. They have a very young player in TJ Searcy, who's in his second year, thought to be probably the main target there to take over for Princely Human-Mielon to at that edge spot to create pressure on the quarterback. But I think Florida could probably use some experience there at the same time there, Mark. So did hit the transfer portal with George Gums, but he transferred from Miami of Ohio, if I remember off the top of my head right. Only played 1 year of defense last year. So just not a lot of experience at that edge spot for Florida. So that's another position I do think they can attack in the transfer portal. That'd be my probably top two. Maybe another interior offensive lineman. As I said, they hit the transfer portal for 2 tackles. If push came to shove, maybe another interior offensive lineman, but wide receiver, edge rusher, maybe tight end as well is where Florida could go transfer portal hunting and when it opens up next week.
So if nothing drastically changes before August, where are the biggest position battles?
Ooh, I'll go safety again because I said there were some young players in Jordan Castell and Bryce Thornton who played a lot last year, and they brought in some experienced guys in the transfer portal. So I do think it's a big benefit for Florida, Mark, to create a whole lot of competition in that room. I think who comes out of those battles will be a big, big plus for Florida. Linebacker, I mentioned edge rusher, but this is kind of how I explained it. It's just so young at edge rusher. TJ Searcy is the guy, but maybe behind him some battles. But I'll go with the linebacker. Shamar James the incumbent, not doing too much in spring this year as he recovers from an injury. Bring in Pup Howard from South Carolina, right up the road in Jacksonville. Florida missed out the first time. He spent a year in South Carolina. Year 2, he's now at Florida. He will probably, to me, end up being the guy besides Shamar James, but he's in a battle with Jaden Robinson. Some other guys, Manny Nunnery, has been limited this spring a bit too, maybe backing up Shamar James. But I like that competition there at the linebacker spot. And then probably the running back behind Montrell Johnson. He's for sure the number 1 running back. Trevor Etienne on his way to Georgia. Trayon Webb in his second year. Florida brought in a couple of true freshmen they're really excited about in this running back room. So I do think running back behind Montrell Johnson could be a pretty interesting battle as well.
How is the 2025 recruiting cycle coming along at this point?
Pretty good, Mark. It's going to be weird, kind of seeing how it all shakes out. Florida's, in some battles. They got some names there, Mark, but I do think it's probably going to be a lot of wait and see mode for how Florida performs in this season. They had that big summer rush last year. They got up to number 3 in the recruiting rankings. The season didn't go as well as they had hoped, and certainly had a falter down the stretch. So I'll pull it up. I think it's 4 or 5 commits right now. Off the top of my head, let me see. Pretty quick. So 5 commits right now, led by Jalen Wiggins, one of the top defensive linemen in the country. Went to the state of Georgia and got Peyton Joseph, an interior offensive lineman. Offensive line recruiting has not been the best since Billy Napier has taken over. Definitely known for their development of lower-rated prospects, but recruiting starting at a high level in that room would certainly be a big boon for this program to get that position group changed around. But sitting at 5 commits right now, Mark, about 2 top 100 prospects as it sits right now. So a lot of visits over the last few weeks. There'll be some at the spring game as well. Hopefully that can set the stage for some kind of big summer at Florida. Again, they definitely won't have that big push they had last summer, Mark. There's just no way with the situation this program is in right now, whether it's true or not, whether it's fair or not, that the talk of Billy Napier being on the hot seat. But that's certainly going to come across in recruiting battles from rival coaches. That's going to be brought up. So I think it's going to be a little bit slower summer than it was last year, more of a wait-and-see approach, and see if Florida can have a big finish compared to what they did last year.
David, I've spent many an off-season day ranking schedules and building spreadsheets and making all sorts of comparisons and trying to figure out, okay, they may have the toughest, they may have the second tough, and it's usually a very close call trying to figure out for the entire Power 5. This offseason, slam dunk, no doubt. It's Florida. I don't even have to look at it past that. It's incredible, and you probably have talked about it ad nauseum. The final 5 games are ridiculous. So is there this thought that among the fan base that, come on, how are we going to get through this season and have whatever we could term a successful season? This could be, if this team goes 7-5, they better be ranked like in the top 20 in the country. Seriously. You get 7 wins. There will be good wins on that schedule. I mean, that's how tough this schedule is. Samford is the only for sure write it in a marker win. I mean, look, Mississippi State in year 1 of Jeff Lebby, that should be a win. But Billy Napier's had trouble on the road since he's been head coach at Florida. I mean, there's been no for sure wins when you've dealt with Billy Napier at Florida so far. Losing to Vanderbilt in year 1, losing to Arkansas last year as well. Games that should have been wins for Florida did not appear to be wins when were not wins when the final gun exploded. So, Mark, it's very tough, and it starts week 1 with Miami. UCF comes to town as well. Texas A&M with Mike Elko comes to town, and then you mentioned that final 5-game stretch. It is tough. I mean, Kentucky is not a for sure win or anymore for Florida. Play them before a bye week, and then Georgia. So, I mean, Mark, the final 7 games: Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. I mean, it is brutal.
But I've maintained the fact, Mark, if this thing is headed in the right direction, no matter how hard the schedule is, we should know. I mean, there's enough talent on the roster not to compete for championships. Nobody's expecting Florida to compete for championships, but there's enough talent on this roster. If it's headed in the right direction, you'll know. There should be a couple of upset wins. You should win the games you're supposed to win. We should, by the time Florida State rolls around in late November, we should know the direction of this program, if it's headed in the right direction under Billy Napier, no matter how hard the schedule is.
And you probably know better than I do that week 1 showdown against Miami, that's a home game. That's a huge advantage, obviously. But those Miami fans are counting that up as a win like it's nothing. And these are 2 teams and 2 programs trying to find themselves. So that could really push one of them in a good direction. And then the other one, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, there's another program right now that can say there's no for sure wins on the schedule. Miami's in that boat as well, given the games that they have lost, how they've lost games the last couple of years under Mario Cristobal. Look, that's a high stakes game. Both coaches had in their 3rd year. Both coaches looking for some momentum in their programs. Mark, I think for that side of Miami that you just explained, if you go to the Florida side of it, I've mentioned the unexplainable losses that Billy Napier has had in his tenure so far, where there's been some unexplainable wins early season for Billy Napier the last couple of years as well. Getting that game opening win versus Utah, getting that first big home game win last year versus Tennessee. So there's been those big at-home wins that Billy Napier has been able to provide the last couple of years. Miami seems to be in that boat as well. So, that would be beneficial for Florida to play like that again, but to create some momentum. If there's one word that has really done Billy Napier in so far in his tenure at Florida, it's been momentum. Like I said, you had that win versus Utah last year or in year 1, only to follow it up the week later by, just completely no-show versus Kentucky. And then last year, you beat Tennessee at home only to falter just a couple of weeks later again against Kentucky again. So thankfully, maybe Kentucky's not early in the season to derail Florida's early season momentum. That game's later in the season, but just not being able, going back to recruiting. You had that number 3 recruiting class last year, not being able to keep that up. So momentum has not been friendly to Billy Napier, but you got to start somewhere to build momentum, and no better place than getting that game 1 win against Miami.
The best in Florida football coverage, folks. Gators Breakdown, favorite audio platform right here on YouTube, gatorsbreakdown.com as well. You see David and where to follow him on X. David, we always appreciate the breakdown. Good to see you. Hope everything's well, and we will see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.